Good to go. All right. Okay, well, welcome everybody. He gave me an impossible task. It's not going to happen. We're just going to start out from there by saying it. He wants me to stand here a lot of times so that I can be on this screen for people. But you know that's not going to happen because I never stop moving. So my introduction is I am a professional gardener, and we do all different kind of things. We install flowers, annuals, perennials, trees, prune trees, and everything else. And I've been doing this for 30 years now. So what I want to share with you today is some of the things that I have learned along the way. Some of the stuff are things that I read that I don't believe in, that I tried, and I said, oh, sure, it says this in the book, but that's not the way it goes. Other things are things that I definitely believe and need to have done more. So we're going to start here. My daughter texted me this morning, and the first thing she said is, Mom, don't forget, don't be snippy today. So I said, okay, we'll start with that. We came up with that title a long time ago, and it's always worked, but the presentation always changes. So, and now we got locked out, Pete, which I knew was going to happen. I'm gonna need, yeah, it's it does this to me every time. So while he's figuring that out to get it to move, questions on what things you need pruned? Did you have questions on, like different plant material? Which ones are plants that you would definitely like? You got it? That you would like to talk about or make sure that I've got in there? Anything? Yeah.
Viburnum, yes, some overgrown viburnum.
It's in the presentation. It's a perfect one. Okay, yeah. 9 bark. Okay. Japanese like that. Okay. Yeah.
Rose and Sharon.
Rose of Sharon. Okay. Yeah. Lilac. Got it.
Ranger.
Which one?
Lilac.
Limelight. Okay. Got those.
And when to do it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you distinguish between old wood and new wood moving so that we know not to cut off next year's flowers?
Sure. Okay. Yep. Other ones? Roses. Okay. Got it. Yep. Way back. Hydrangeas. Okay. Butterfly bush. Okay. Good. We got a good assortment. I think I got all of them in here. First I'm going to start out with kind of this is at one of our clients' house, right on Middle Belt and stuff. So this is a tough one because a lot of different microclimates, a lot of salt flying off from the salt spray from the street and everything else. But look at that Japanese maple. What you want is every plant goes for that same thing. You want to think about good air circulation. If you think about that first, that's probably one of the things that helps the most. Here's another one. Now we took this is not our client, so don't look at all those weeds or anything, but she's kind of got it tied up a little in a couple spots, but it's the same thing as that air circulation with plants really helps tremendously. And we'll get in versus something like this. And you see a lot of things like this, and I don't know what all that tying up is for and everything else, but you know, you can fix this easy. You can, and actually you can just fix it with one pruning technique. Just like one cut at the base and it's all good and start all over again. but that's going to take a lot of time, but it will happen. So one of the first things to think about is you want to maintain the integrity of the plant, and that is not always thought of. We have different clients, and one of them that is our most difficult is a condo complex. And the reason it's a difficult one is because I manage 3/4 of the stuff, and then landscapers come in and they manage the other part. And we naturally butt heads a lot. And this whole process of maintaining the integrity of the plant is what I believe is the strongest thing for you to follow. Everybody here told me a different plant and they have it because they like it. They like the lime bark, they like the hydrangeas, the limelights, the butterfly bush, all these different plants, and you love them for what they are. Okay, so keep that integrity going. And one of the main things in a lot of these, you look at this plant, this is a tough one. This is a pear. It's a Bradford pear, and they have a lot of problems. And I would not buy a Bradford pear ever, because they have so many problems. But the point of that, this is that look at the plant, look at the shape of this plant. It's a pyramidal plant, so it's got a central leader, and that's the first thing you're going to do is keep an eye on that, and don't top it off and cut it, because when you do, then all these different sprouts shoot up from that, and there goes the integrity of the plant, and then you lose the pyramidal shape. You can do something like this. This isn't too far from us. This is Adams and like Long Lake, I think over there or something. I always drive by it in the spring and go, boy, how did they do that? They had to have, you know, big booms and trucks and everything to keep it like that. And, you know, you can kind of think of them as big gumdrops, but they're doing it and it looks great, and keep it going. This is what you see a lot of. This is a crabapple in the spring. And more importantly, this is what it looks like in the winter and the fall when it drops its leaves. So what are you looking at? You're looking at a major mess. Okay, and that's what you want to try to avoid. If you are not pruning and you are going to find somebody who's going to prune, you want them to show you pictures of what they've done. And if they show you something like this or something, you know, topped off like that, that's not what you want, because we have no air circulation in there. I mean, even a bird can't make a nest in that place. You know, if you look at it, and that's what and what that is that's just a simple hedge trim. That's fine. A lot of people like to just hedge trim. I do not believe in that, and I don't do that. I thin out the plant first, and then I'll go back and kind of shape it the way I want it. But I never do something like this over and over and over again, because this is what happens. It just gets thicker and thicker. It's a great invitation for insects, for funguses, for diseases, because there's no air circulation. Water sits in there. We had a lot of rain this year. You know, we really did have a lot of rain this year, and we faced different challenges that we haven't faced before. Oh, by the way, if you do have, I just thought about that. If you do have like the Bradford pears or any of those, what we found this year, especially, I knew it before, but we found it more this year, is don't prune them in early spring when you want to cut them back. You would prune them after they flower, and a lot of them you will, and we'll go into that, but specifically these, because we're finding them more susceptible to fire blight issues. So keep an eye on that. I would go prune later after they're done flowering than before or during the flowering period. This is more of what you want. You want an open structure. You want, and what you're looking at is you want where the plant comes up, where the stems come up, you want like a good 45-degree angle from this straight up versus, and that like this plant, this tree, I took this in 1991. This is in my backyard now, and it's 40-some feet tall. But it had good structure throughout the whole thing, and it's still an incredible tree. This is what we're looking at, is like a nice spiral shape. Almost think of it as like a spiral staircase. As you want the plant, you're going around in the plant, you're looking at each stem coming off. And when they're doing that, you're also going for nice 45-degree angles. If you got that, the plant's open, airy, and each branch is stronger. If you think about an oak tree, they always say, what do you call the oak? Is the mighty oak. If you think about the oak tree, then one of the reasons it's so strong is if you ever looking the branching pattern of an oak tree, it's almost straight up is your trunk and almost a 90-degree vertical or horizontal branches coming out. Those are the strongest ones you can get, and that's why they call it the mighty oak. So the wider the V's are in between that, the stronger the plant is. Versus something like this is the silver maple. Silver maple has a lot of breakage. I think in Troy, they outlaw silver maples. So if you see those Troy police driving around putting tickets on the silver maples, you'll know why. Because there is a lot of breakage with them because they have very narrow V's. The wider the V's are, the stronger the plant is. So this is a good, basically what I'm saying here is if you're going shopping for a tree, this is what you're looking for. You're looking for nice, strong branches so that you can prune them out later or do what you have to, but it's strong to begin with. So you're not worried about a lot of breakage and splitting that way. Here's a nice one that we have here. And what we're looking for is a cut right where that kind of bulge hangs. There's a bulge there, and I'll go into the next one to show it, but this is what you don't want to do. This is back at that condo complex, and this was a year where I almost pulled out half my hair because I came through and the guys had come through and pruned, and every one of the pruning cuts was wrong. And these are wrong pruning cuts. You don't want to leave the classic thing. There's different things in your head when you're walking around and pruning, and one of the things is you never leave stubs. You never, and that up on the top left, see how there's a stub there? You want to actually go straighter down. And I'm sorry, my pointer broke and I got to go buy a new one, so I can't do it as well. But you want to cut back like what, maybe 4 inches back so that you're more into that bulge. That's the branch collar of the plant. And that's the part that protects the plant. If you make a proper cut there, it seals off. It's called compartmentalization, but basically it seals off that area so no funguses or diseases or problems happen. So this is gonna be a problem. This is a problem because they cut it wrong. This is one that actually is done right. If you can go back, or if somebody shows you plants and you've got a nice round seal like a perfect donut, you know that that was originally done correctly. Versus something like this is close, but they did cut too tight at the top and the bottom. But those donuts kind of help you evaluate what was a good pruning cut and what wasn't. So now we get into the nitty gritty. So this is kind of like that other tree that I showed you. And all we're going to do when we get into something like this is look at cross branches. And we're just looking at anything that's rubbing against each other, which is like the whole darn thing. and I got to tell you, the toughest part about pruning is actually picking up those pruners and dropping them and walking away, because you can keep cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting. And ideally, you want to only do like, say, maybe 25–30% max. That's not always the case, and a lot of times it's fine. You know, if you do more than that, you're not in big trouble, but you want to keep it. You want to, when I go out to a client's house, I'm going to tell them right off the bat, if I see something like that last picture, I'm going to say, look, this is at least a 3-year project, and we're going to take our time and we're going to do it correctly. And I'm going to take out 25%, and I'm taking out the worst branches, the ones that are crisscrossing, that are the troublemakers, that are causing the most problem. Like something like this, I'm going to take out probably that bottom branch because it's cutting through here, and it's going to rip the bark off of both of those other branches. So I'm evaluating when I'm pruning. There's 2 of us out there. I'm in there pruning, and Sue, who works with me, she's out there and she's telling me a lot of times which ones to prune and which ones not to, because she can see it from the outside, and she can see a lot of times things that I can't see when I'm underneath. And I might say, hey, I want to take this one out. And she's like, no, because if you stand back, it's gonna ruin the structure of the tree here. So we're gonna take this one out instead. So if you got a helper, that really makes it a lot easier. So, and you can see what's happening. They're already getting scale and stuff on those on the top there. So problems are happening. This was, I took this picture a long time ago. And this was in February, and I was actually walking around the neighborhood, and I had a camera, and I had loppers, and I had a small ladder. And my neighbor says to me, she goes, Anybody else walking around the neighborhood with that kind of stuff, we would have been worried about. But we knew it was only you, and we just thought, let's just watch her and see what she does. So this was so I went to the neighbors and I said, hey, is it okay if I prune your crab apple? And she said no. And then she said, of course. So the one on the top left is what I started with. That was the top one. And then the next picture I took on the top right was from standing up above on my ladder, taking a picture going straight down. So this was quite a while ago. So these are actually slides that I took. And then the third one is how I opened it up at the end. So that's how it looks. So what we did was we basically just took, if there's a troublemaker, if there's a plant, if there's a stem that's going straight up, or it's coming out here and it's going across this way, that's a troublemaker and I'm going to take him out. Anything that's going back in toward the center, I want all branches aiming out. That's where I'm going to get my most, the best trimming. And you can see when it's all done, there's a lot of good air circulation there. This is in February. Believe it or not, there was no snow then, but this was in February. And that plant to this day is an awesome plant because we got it started right. This is what you don't want to do. And you'll see this stuff. This was in my neighbor's backyard. And I'm like, oh boy. And that is a classic example of a stub, is they cut up there and they just hacked it off, which is a bad technical term, but it makes a lot of sense. You say hack and whack and people know what you're talking about. So they hacked it off right there. And then what happens is because they didn't cut it at a branch collar, that it doesn't compartmentalize, it doesn't heal, so to speak. And so it just keeps dying back and you start getting adventitious suckers growing up through there. And it just keeps going back down toward the base of the plant and toward the trunk. Does that make sense so far? I know it's kind of, I know a lot of you know this stuff, but it kind of, these are just kind of like simple ones. Like this is an Amalacare. We just kind of had a little bit of fun with this. Just kind of thinned it out and trimmed it up, and it was an easy thing to do. It wasn't too bad. Here's another one on the other side. So what we're trying to do is we're doing thinning branches. We're doing a lot of thinning. This is forsythia. Nobody asked for forsythia, but I got it anyway. So this is forsythia before, and this is forsythia after. Yep, I'm going to do that there. So what I want to tell you right here, when you're looking at this picture is, and I would say, remember this over, there's a lot of good stuff to remember, but this is a good one, is all flowering plants, your lilacs, your forsythia, your hydrangeas, your all your plants, but especially like lilacs, because they get what, 25, 30 feet tall and everything else. All flowering plants always flower best on young wood. They always flower best on young wood. So the viburnums. So your goal is to take out, go to the base and take out some of the thickest stems so that you end up with the younger, thinner plant material that's going to grow up and give you the best flowers. So this was in early spring. This was actually, this was another one that was like in March. Now this is going to bloom in April, but we had to get in there and do it at that time. So we did. You would say, don't do that because it's going to flower. And I'm going to say, yes, you're right. But it was the time, it was the right time to prune it for that plant. We thinned it out. We didn't hedge trim it so that we cut all the flower tips off. Instead, we went at the base and took the thickest ones out, and all the young ones all flowered, and it was a better plant. So like ideally, all right, let's back up for 1 second. Right now is October 27th. It's my brother's birthday. I got to call him. Today is October 27th. What is happening with plants right now? If you're thinking about, I'm a lilac. I'm a lilac today. Okay, so my leaves make food very simply out of photosynthesis. Okay. They make food, that food is in the leaves, it goes down the stems, it goes down into the trunk, and eventually it goes down to the roots. And when that plant is dormant, those nutrients are down at the roots, and that plant is happy because it's got that food, just like we would be. Okay, if I prune today, I go out and I say, I'm gonna go prune some stuff. What happens is that plant says, oh geez, what did she do that for? I had that food that was coming down here to go to me. Now I've got to send back up energy from my roots. I've got to send energy up to try to heal or compartmentalize those cuts that she made. So that's why we really don't want to prune in the fall, because that plant's got to take that energy back, turn it back around, go back up the other way, and try to heal those spots. So that's why we try not to prune at this time of the year. In the wintertime, though, in February or March, it's more about us than anything else, and if it's going to be too cold. But if it's wintertime, that plant is just sitting there. The whole winter, it's had that food, and it's dormant, and it's fine, and it's happy, and it's going to be shooting up nutrients pretty soon as the weather starts warming up and season signals start to trigger it. So if we're going and we're pruning in, like, say, February or March or even early April, if we're pruning at that time, it's going to be sending up that energy anyway to heal things. So if we do it at that time of the year, that's when the plant's the happiest, because it can heal those cuts quicker. Okay, so that's why we do what we do for the timing wise. But if you have to do certain things, if there's dead wood, you always have to cut dead wood down. If there's disease issues, you can cut those down. But don't forget about oaks. There's a lot of other things going on. Oak wilt disease is horrible. Anybody that has oaks, first thing I can tell you is educate yourself. Make sure you know that you don't let anybody prune that plant unless it's in the winter time, but that's a whole other story. So this is forsythia thinned out. Okay, this is a crab apple, and we thinned that one out along with that burning bush over there on the right. So this is a lot of times what you see from the hedge trimming or something like that. You just want to make it shorter, or you want to keep it the same height, you want to keep it that type of thing. This next picture I want to show you, I want you to be prepared because it's an ugly picture. So this is our condo complex, and this was in 2017. And the same company had been coming in and hedge trimming everything in June. And by doing that and just going in, these are burning bush, you might not even be able to tell it. That plant is completely covered with mites and is completely damaged beyond control. So the condo complex that we have is a big one. It's 4 blocks. Okay, it's a big one, and we take care of all the flowers, and we do a lot over there. I did not want to get involved in there. However, if you know me, you're like, I can't let that go on. So I went to the board. It took me 2 years for them to okay, and for them to get the landscaping crew. We ended up we did an agreement, a compromise, is I let them hedge trim all the yews and the evergreens, and I took care of all the deciduous plants. So this is what we did. So this is it from another side. So you can see it was damaged all the way around, and they weren't doing, and I'm like, I'm going to save you a heck of a lot of money, because I'm going to get this back, and you're not going to have to use any sprays or anything else on these plants. So this is what they were like. It took us a couple years. We were allowed to do certain things and not certain things, but in 2021, when we finally got everything okay, this was how big they were, and this is what they were in May of 2023. What we had to do, we had a lot of goals. If you look at that, we're also thinking of security issues. Those plants were right up against the windows. They were way too high, but we couldn't take them down at one time, because when we went into the inside of the plant, it was all leaves and right at the top, but the whole inside was totally bare. So if I would have just gone in and just cut it and say, okay, it's 8 feet, I'm gonna cut it to 4 feet, it would have been horrible and they would have kicked me out and said, you don't know what you're doing. So we had to take it in stages and made it a project. This is what it looked like 2 days ago. So we've got them now next year, because finally we have got a lot of, there's sunshine going through the whole middle of the plant. And because of that now, next year, I can go in and I can even take them down a little bit more and I can shape them a little better. They're tall on that side. I get that. I see that. I know that's not right, but I had to leave them that way because it was bare branches, because of the shade of the tree that you kind of see. You know, there's a lot of factors when you're working on these things. It's not just the plant material, but also the whole microclimate around here. So that's what I want you to kind of take away from this is it is a process. That's what it looked like. And oh, this turned on me again. And I don't know why I did that twice. I'm not gonna show you that one. I don't know why I did that. It did that twice to me. I changed that and saved it last night again. And we'll just skip by those. So in the wintertime, it should look something like this. Nice and airy and open. And then in the springtime, it's going to send out those buds and it's going to work great. This is viburnum. So here was one of the questions on viburnum. So this is viburnum on the left. We also have the same issue. That's at that condo complex. We had been there for, I think we started there, might have been like 2008, 9, 10, somewhere in there, 2010 maybe. We had been there and we got to know the people. We actually know the names of all the dogs more than we know the people, because they're all walking around with their dogs. You know, I can tell you every dog. Little Bella comes by and bites me every time, and you know, different things like that, but she's cute, so it's okay. Somebody said to me, well, what's the deal with those plants? You know, can we get something else that flowers? And I said, well, they do flower. And she goes, well, they've never flowered. And I said, well, that's because the guy, and then we saw them and the guys came in July and cut them all down and everything else. So we said, okay, so we had to get control of those. So that's what we did, is we're slowly taking those down. And this is kind of what it looks like. What I'm showing you is that's what we started with on the left, and both of them really. But on the left, you can see, okay, so we go back to that all flowering plants flower best on young wood. And so when you're looking at that one, you're seeing there is a lot of thick stems that are going up, and a lot of them are dead or a lot of cankers on them and everything else. So we went down and we started thinning them. And that cut was not the right cut on the bottom there. I just did that to kind of show what we were doing. Sometimes you have to go in and you have to make a couple cuts. And honestly, to tell you the truth, most of the time I use a reciprocating saw, because I can get in there and I can make a pinpoint cut, versus if I'm trying to use like loppers or different things. A lot of times when you start out and they're so thick like that, you're cutting into other stems and other plants. So a reciprocating saw, I can make a more of a precision cut there. And this is what we ended up doing with a lot of these, is rejuvenating them by taking out all the dead stuff, because I took out one, and then because this one was crossing this was crossing that, and then there was cankers on this. So we ended up doing that, but leaving enough so that the whole plant, now they look great. So on the far right, I know that's a really bad picture, but those are all cankers on that right side over there. And that's what happened with those. And so all that had to be cut out, because it would have killed the plant anyway. So viburnums are a fun one, like I said, and the timing is you prune them after they're done flowering. So they're going to bloom. They bloom in late April, early May, after they're done blooming. The ideal thing is with pruning plants is like the spring flowering plants. If, like, say lilacs start blooming June 1st, then prune from June 1st to July 1st. You've got like the window of about a month. And usually they say 6 weeks. I just figure a month, so I do it. You prune them then, And then they're gonna start forming buds for next year. So that's the whole idea of old wood versus new wood. I'm gonna let any of those guys that are spring flowering ones, I'm gonna prune them within a month after they flowers, and then I'm done. I walk away. A lilac now, my lilacs in the backyard, and my lilacs, I've got, well, one that could have been probably 30 feet tall, but I keep them to the size I want. It takes me maybe 10 minutes to prune it, because all I do is I just take out 1 or 2 of the thickest ones now at the base of the plant, and I'm done. You know, and I might shape a couple of the other ones so that if it's hanging over the neighbors. So I have a very tall neighbor next door, and our lilac is right on the lot line. So I have to make sure that I trim it back far enough so it doesn't poke him in the eye when he's cutting the grass. So, you know, it's those kind of things that you're thinking about. So this is another disaster. This was at a client, these people, this was a real hard one because we took over for another professional gardener, and because they were retiring, and I was actually, and I'm sorry that's not clear up there, but I was actually very upset with this because they shouldn't have gone this long. So the client came to me and she said, this is a plant, I don't know what it is. I said, well, that's a victory. And basically all they did was they just hedge sheared across the whole top. Well, if you can kind of see, they had, before that top picture is the before one, and that's one of the after ones, they had a sidewalk that they couldn't use for years because the plant grew completely over the sidewalk, or almost completely over the sidewalk. So what we had to do is get in that bottom left picture, we had to get into the center underneath there, and all I was doing, and I think I do have my reciprocating saw there, I'm just cutting out the thickest ones and the ones that are closest to the sidewalk so that we can kind of clear this up. And it's the same thing. I told him, I said, it's going to be like a 3-year project because it's going to take that, because they want it shorter. I'm going to get it shorter, but not this year. So we got into the center. It ends up on the top right. That's how we ended up. So now you've got air circulation through there. And then I went up. So you can see that's an 8-foot ladder. So that's how tall it was up there. So I climbed up there and then I just trimmed the rest of it just to shape it. Next year we start again, and it'll be fine. So red twig dogwoods before, during, and after. Okay, the problem with red twig, how many, does anybody have red twig dogwoods?
It's still not 2 years.
Okay, the problem with the red twig dogwood, the hardest part about it is that red twig dogwoods, people like to shape them and they like to cut them shorter. Unfortunately, there's something that's called dieback canker. And the reason you get dieback canker is you see all those dark brown ones in there? That's what dieback canker is when they get older and they get trimmed, it just keeps dying back, and it turns from red to brown. So ideally, you want to plant them in a spot where you're not going to have to shorten them. And what you were going to try to do is just thin them out so that you're complementing them by having the red twigs. So you take out the oldest ones, but if you have to do anything off the top, be as minimal as possible. And that helps those the best. This is rejuvenation pruning. So this is a potentilla here. You can do the same thing with spireas. It's basically what I did because it ends up being a garbage collector. You can see there's tons of stuff through there, and the thicker and thicker the potentilla get, then they don't do as well. So we cut it right to the ground, completely to the ground. And you know what? And here I'm going to get on my soapbox for like 12 seconds. All those guys that are cutting down grasses right now, I don't know why they do it, but you see these grasses, you're driving down the road. I almost have accidents all the time because you're driving down the road and here's the grass, the ornamental grass, and they cut it back this high. You'll see it all the time is they, instead of cutting it down to the ground, they cut it back this high. And there's no reason for that. And it actually doesn't help. And it's ugly in the spring and it doesn't work. Same thing with these. So these guys are cut right to the ground. This is back at that first place that I showed you. And so there's the spireas. You see them kind of popping out there. This is just starting. It's still early spring. Those are not buds on it yet. It's still early spring. Now you see them and now you don't. They're completely gone. You see them, they were there, and now they're gone. Okay, we took them all the way down. 3 weeks later, this is the new growth that's starting to grow up. And another 3 weeks after that, you've got a nice fresh plant. And then the year after that, all I need to do is go into the center and just take out a couple of the thickest ones. Takes me 3 minutes and I'm done. Yeah, right there. Could I what? Deutzia, yes, you can. Yeah, if Deutzia gets really out of, yeah, mine are not that out of control. So yeah, but Deutzia is definitely, you can do it with that one too. Yeah.
So the ornamental grass, like you said earlier.
The ornamental, no, the ornamental grasses are a whole nother issue, but there's different ones like miscanthus you can leave for the winter because they stand up, you know, like they have nice plumes and in the winter time they stand up. But if you notice, like most of the, like the fountain grasses, we're gonna cut them down now because fountain grasses, like the bottle brush ones, they all end up breaking up and just flopping and they end up looking ugly in the winter time. They don't really give winter interest. So when we cut them down, you cut them down to the base because the ornamental grass is just like your lawn. All the tillers at the base in the lawn come up from the base and shoot up. Well, if they cut the grass to a foot high or leave it 2 feet high, then all those new tillers that should be coming up are suffocated and they don't do as well. So when you cut them down, whenever it's convenient or whenever you want to, if you want to leave them through the winter, go ahead because you get winter interest. There's all these different conflicting things that go through your head. But when you cut them down, you go all the way to the ground, take them totally out, and that's when they do the best. So. And speaking of ornamental grasses, so this is blue oat grass. And blue oat grass, when you read in the books say this is an evergreen and you should never cut it back. You should just leave it alone. And it was bugging me and I did it for years and I thought, I don't like it. So one year I said, it's my plant. I can do what I want. I should check, see what happens. So I did, I cut it back as far as I could that I was all into blue grass again instead of got all the brown. And 3 weeks later, this is what I got. So I threw that book out because and I kept my own book because 3 weeks later, that's what it looked like. And it looked a heck of a lot better than what I had originally. Here's some of the stuff that you need. So here's summer flowering plants. That bloom on new wood. Okay, so these are like the hydrangeas, and I put these in here because a lot of people have hydrangeas. I love the hydrangea paniculata series the best of all of them. But so you prune in late winter, early spring, and they say like a kind of a good thing to do, except I don't, is each like at least for 3 days in a row. The low temperature should be above 30 degrees. So that kind of gives you an idea of, you're going to prune those plants and you got to let them, I mean, like if it's going to go down to the 10s, you pruned them and then it goes down to the 10s, you could kind of damage them. So you look at the forecast, it's going to be, the low temperatures are going to be above 30 degrees for like 3 days in a row. Go ahead and go out there and prune. That's like the earliest part of late winter into early spring. So the more you thin with like your limelights, your quick fires, all those paniculata ones, there's a million of them, firelight, there's a lot of them. The more you thin, the bigger the blooms are, which can be a problem because if you get too big of blooms when you prune them, then they're going to weigh down the plant, they're going to flop more, which is what you see a lot. So that's one of those things that you kind of got to keep in your head, like how much do I want to prune? I probably don't prune as much as I should because I want to keep a little bit smaller flowers than real big ones. So don't cut it way back. Okay. Does that make sense for those? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you just hold right on and I'll get a picture of that one for you. It's coming right up. It's coming right up. Okay, so these are the Annabelles up here. So Annabelles are so they bloom on new wood. So the ideal thing is to find out what the name of the plant is that you have. But there's a million of these Annabelles out there. Or the smooth hydrangeas. Annabelles is just one of the varieties. But they a lot of times will flop too much also. So what we kind of do with those is we don't take everything down to the ground because they're going to bloom on new wood. So we'll go out there in March. Usually we're traipsing around in March, you know, with sharpened pruners ready to go. And a lot of times what we'll do is we'll leave half the stems up about 8 inches or a foot, somewhere in there, and the other half we take to the ground. And by doing that, then you get some that are larger blooms and some that are smaller blooms. And when you have the two, then it's kind of nice because they complement each other. You'll have smaller blooms standing up and larger ones that'll flop over. But that way you get a good representation of the plant. So those guys bloom on new wood. Okay, so prune them in the spring, late winter, early spring. Yeah.
My ignorance is showing. Do you bloom are you pruning the new wood?
On those with those, yes, you can prune the new wood as well as the old wood. I mean, it's coming. You're just looking at that plant. You're going to go out there in March and you're going to look at it and you're going to say, I have to take it down because it gets too big. The whole plant gets too big. Usually that's what happens. And then I'm just taking the oldest, thickest ones down to the ground, and the thinner new stuff I'll leave about a foot high. It's, you know, so the thinner stuff they get a little bit more, you know, room to go. So these are spring bloomers. So just like we were talking about, we're going to prune these after they're done flowering. So again, so that's an Amelanchier up there at the top. An Amelanchier maybe finishes May 15th. Then you got till June 15th, you know, just kind of write it down. You know, I got a log going all the time. Okay, that one finished. I'll just write down, oh, it finished blooming that day. Then I know that I've got a month to get out there and go prune it. And then I'm fine because I know it's going to flower great for next year. So the spring bloomers always bloom. You prune them after they're done flowering. These are the mop heads. And these are the ones that are the worst of all. I would tell you not to buy them because most of the time, a lot of the buds die over the winter time and they don't come back. We got problems with them, blah, 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 blah. They're really cool if they're in a nice microclimate and they can get protected. But if you have them, and if you see like that one's in a microclimate that's got, you know, it's sheltered on 2 sides by a wall. So it did pretty well, but a lot of times they don't. So if you have these, just prune them lightly, just the sped blooms, and that's about it. Don't touch them any more than that. And here's your oak leaves. So the oak leaves are the same thing. So you prune them after they're done flowering. So oak leaves, when do they bloom? They bloom like June, July. So after they're done flowering, that's the time to go out there and prune those. So oak leaf is definitely later of all of them. Which is good. It spreads out your time to prune. You know, you can keep those scissors sharp the whole time. The lace caps, the same way after they're done flowering. And lace caps are starting to be a little bit more popular, and they're starting to make, you know, the tough stuff varieties. They're starting to get better varieties out there, so that helps. Climbing hydrangeas, prune them after they're done flowering. Very cool plant. Michael Durr, one of the premier authors on plant material, said that climbing hydrangea is the best landscape vine ever. And it takes a while to get adjusted. It takes a while to get going, but the cinnamon colored bark and the white flowers and the glossy green leaves, it's got a lot going for it. So prune it after it's done flowering. The question is, how long does it take for the climbers to get mature? Sometimes it takes them like 5 years even to get going. I mean, you know, it's supposed to be what, you know, it's a 3 years, something like that, but like they sleep, they creep, and then they leap, and all the different ones. I have seen it take sometimes like a climbing hydrangea 3 years. I've seen 5 years, and then finally, kaboom, it goes and it's happy and it's healthy, but he's spreading all its roots out low before he starts to come out high. Best way to put it. So, sure. And then the rose people. Here's the rose people. Usually the ideal thing to do with the rose, this is a rose in the springtime. And what you're going to do is you don't go out in March, and you don't go out in the beginning of April. And the beginning of April is going to be wonderful, and you're going to say, I better go out there and prune. And then 3 days later, we get an ice storm. So I figure, and it usually works, is tax day. I use tax day, April 15th. You pay your taxes, you're a little bit upset. So you go out there and you take out all your aggression on the rose bush on April 15th. And that usually, because we have had ice storms on April 12th a couple times. There's different, I've been watching them, but April 15th, we're always safe. So I wait till there. And then what we're going to do with that is we are just going to make it all open. We want all buds to point out. We don't want buds to point into the center of the plant, because we want air circulation, and as that plant gets bigger, that air circulation doesn't happen. So you can see on that right picture there, I'm going to trim above that bud because I want the energy going out. I'm making that plant the shape that I want now, just by what I'm doing. So I got it nice, open and airy. That's like a perfect rose bush, open and airy with everything going out. And then if you still get, an ice or something like that, watch it, and you might have to go back. It could cut into that, and you might have to go back lower and prune it back again. But usually that timing for me seems to work good. So. But yeah, climbing roses are a little bit different. There's a couple different ones. Climbing roses, I usually leave them alone until after they flower, that first big flush. And then I go out there and I thin them pretty good after that. I do the best I can that way. I leave them alone in April and stuff. I don't touch them. But then I go after that first big flush, there'll be a nice flush. And then you got to deadhead all those so that you get a next flush. So in between that time is when I kind of thin them out.
How bad is it to do it now or like a month ago?
For roses?
Climbing roses.
The climbing roses, I haven't seen any problems with that. I don't ever, like, the question was if you could cut them now or a little bit earlier or something. I don't like to. My thing with climbing roses, vines, and everything else is winter kill kind of dictates what you're going to prune, because we're going to go through the winter. If I took a plant, any plant, if I took a clematis and and it was 10 feet tall, and I said I don't want that anymore, and I cut it down now to 5 foot tall. Okay. Well, then winter kill comes through, and the cold and the ice and everything else comes into it, and it kills it down even lower, and it might kill it too low. So I figure I leave it alone. And now, because I've got a couple that are looking at me and I'm like, I would love to go out there and do something with you, but I'm not going to. I'm going to leave it alone. And then, late March, usually I get out there, and in fact, I got some slides of that in a minute. So then I go out, and roses are the same thing. I just kind of let them go through the season and be as strong as they can through the winter. And then I attack them in the spring. So if we're going to prune, I don't make this cut, but if I am going to make this cut, it's going to be at an angle so that water rolls off instead of sitting flat. That's the pines. This is the candle stage of a pine tree, because I couldn't find a picture of it with candles on it. So I threw that. So this is the candle stage. So that's when you want to prune the pines, is in June during the candle stage. And you try to just trim you can trim the whole branches back to the base. Or you can go back to like, if you don't want that pine to grow at all, that candle as tall as that candle is, you just cut it short at the base. If you want it to grow a little bit, then just cut it 2 inches. And then when those candles grow and they open up, that's how big that burst of energy is for that plant. And that's how big it gets. So pines are during the candle stage, and that's usually in June. Spruce and fir, you prune them as the new tips are starting to emerge, because you can get in there and you can prune them back. You can prune back some of the new growth, and the other new growth that's up above them maybe covers up the cuts. So you kind of don't want to, you still want to, again, maintain the integrity of the tree. So I'm just always going back to where another like this one, another branch is coming out. So where I'm just going to take it all the way back, never leave stubs, take it back to the next branch at the main part, and then trim from there. Okay, so spruces are easy that way. Now these guys, the yews have the ability to, they can keep growing. They can continue to push new growth throughout the season. But ideally, most of theirs is through, now through mid-June. So if you look at the middle of a yew, you can trim it like this. If you look at the middle of the yew, the cool thing about this evergreen is that it does reproduce new buds in the center of the plant. But if it's so thick and dense in there, you're not going to get very much. So what I like to do is I like to trim, open it up, and let's go to this one. I call it windows. Okay, I'm going to go around the plant, and I'm just going to go into the center, and I'm just going to make a cut, never stubs, but I'm going to make a cut so far, maybe take out a branch that's got, like this wide or something, and just go around and make windows. So what it's doing is it's getting sunlight back into the center of the plant, because you'll go to some people's houses and you can almost see through their yews because they trimmed it so much, they hedged it so much that outer edge is green and everything else through the middle is nothing, and it's so dense. So if we put sunlight back into the center, then I can take that plant down later and I'm not worried about it. It's going to look great because I've got sunshine back into the center of the plant. So here we go back to that air circulation thing. It helps a lot. However, if you prune them after late August, they will, a lot of times around late August, you prune them and you go out then, it's going to send up new buds and it's going to set up new shoots because they have the ability, if the growing conditions are right, to keep growing. Maybe not every year, but this year with all the rain we had, they would keep growing. So we're going to cut them back. If we cut them back in late August, next spring, you're not going to know it in August. You're not going to know it September, October, November, December. But next spring, you're going to look at that and say, what happened? Is that a bug? Is that an insect? Is fungus? What's going on? No, that was me. I did it last August. It's my fault. So that's why you prune them like through June, maybe July at the 4th of July or something, but then don't do it after that. This is ideally the way a yew should be pruned as far as the shape goes. You don't see it very often, but it's more like a pyramidal shape because what happens, you get sun on all sides of the plant that way. Okay, most everybody else prunes them the other way or square, but if you ideally do it that way and then you put windows in the middle of the plant, that would be so windows is thinning. It's my name for thinning, but that's what you're doing so that you're going to get sunlight on all sides. Now the arborvitaes, this is what it looks like. This is what it can look like. It does not come back from that. Okay, if you prune into the center of that and you cut that back, it's not going to, it might, but it's going to take a while because it doesn't grow a lot of times, but it can grow from the inside. I'm being a little funny with this because this is at my mom's, and on the left, that tree, that arborvitae is like almost to the second. I know that's not a great picture of it, but I was trying to keep all the bags out of the picture, so I was going one angle, the other angle. So that arborvitae, this is an emerald green that's supposed to say, what, 8 to 10 feet tall, and that thing's like 15 over there. Now I've got it down lower on the right so that it's even with the window. So what I actually did with that one is I went in to the center of the plant, and I started taking the ones that were more dead in the center, and I was taking those down. This is like a year after I did that, but look what happened. I started getting all brand new green through the center of that plant. So I went and I did the center part, took that stuff, it took a bunch of the thick dead stuff out. Now we got sun in there, and then because this is getting nice and full, I'm not having that skeleton on the inside anymore, I can take that plant down even lower next year if I want to. So again, it's a 3 or 4 year project. On the right, what I'm just showing you there is if you've got older arbs, get in there even with your blower and blow the crap out of that thing, because there is so much debris, old leaves and everything else that gets in there. You'll find bees' nests in there in the springtime. You'll find a lot of stuff if you don't do this, but I'll take the blower on full blast and I just clean it out, and that it rejuvenates the plant. Yeah.
What time of year?
Same thing, late winter. I was actually these arbs, this one, because it's my mom's and she won't yell at me. I even was in there like in June and July and stuff. I was in there, but usually I try to do it. Most of the time I'm out there actually before the birds start making nests, because sometimes the starlings will get in there. So usually I'm doing that like in March. No. This is Janet Makanovich, who a lot of you know, and this was a client that we did the lighting there and she did the plant material, and she kind of opened them up in a different fashion, but to get some sunlight in there and make them a little bit different and unique, and it worked out great. You know, deer will nibble on arbs, deer will do different things, but if you have something like that and they nibble on it, it's not as obvious as other things. So kind of zipping through here. I hope you guys are okay with that. But junipers, go down to the base and just kind of, I trim those out and I just kind of pull out some of the longest ones, and I'm always just trying to hide the cuts so nobody sees the cuts, so that a branch up above is hiding what I took out underneath. The rhododendrons, I am just gonna snip off. Make sure you snip off those flowering buds, because if you snip, we just take them with fingernails and just snap them off. Because if we do that, then look at the new flower buds for next year. A lot of times we get double flowers that way. So easy to do. And you'll also notice that rhododendron, we keep a good eye on those. And look at the leaves are green. They're not deep green yet, but we're keeping an eye on them. We use hollytone on them. We use a lot of garden sulfur, back and forth, different things. And these people are off the lake. They're taking tough conditions, although I do put like a burlap fence kind of around them, not touching them, but a burlap fence to kind of break the wind, and that helps a lot. Look at that. That's Sue that works with me. She almost got eaten up by those plants, but there's how we just kind of, that was a client who didn't really like us to take out too much stuff. So whenever they weren't looking, we took things out. And you know, like if you looked that before, look at that spruce, they have no idea that the ivy going up is gone. And they have no idea that a lot of that, the thing with rhododendrons is you have to watch, we pulled it all away because that Pachysandra and the ivy rhododendrons have a very small very shallow root system, and they need water. They need water a lot. And Pachysandra and anything is like a major enemy of a rhododendron. So that's why we keep, and they bloom great. Here's the clematis before and after. Before on the left and on the right after. I would tell you the main thing you are looking for is this. Sometimes clematis can get clematis wilt or clematis wilt, however you want to pronounce it. And you are looking for this. If you see the white brittle branches on it, you're going to prune back farther so that you don't see white. You're going farther back down the plant so that when you're all done, you don't see any of the white on there. You just see nice solid brown branches. That's the key to those. Okay, this is kind of cool. In 1992, I took this slide and I was really mad because the guys had come through with their tree pruner things, and I was just very upset because if you look at this, like those that V right at the top there, they didn't have to do that. They just topped it right there, and there's a branch that slides out to the right. They could have let all the energy, they could have pruned it so that everything was aiming to the right and the left, but instead they just kind of topped it. And we said, you know, this is not a good way to do it. Well, we were proved right, because in 2012, I went back and there's, you can still kind of see that V up there. They never trimmed anything after that. But look, when we looked closer in, look what happened. Everything that, where that V was, look at that, all, because that was basically a stub, all that rotted down. It just rotted all the way down, and it's actually rotting right into the main trunk. So if they would have just taken the time to do a couple pruning cuts correctly and shoot the energy out instead of just topping it, that plant would probably be the integrity of that plant would have been a heck of a lot better. So it just kind of gives you an idea of, you know, seeing and doing and then seeing it later really makes sense. These are things not to do. This was at the condo complex when I was like, okay, here's a major stub right here on the left. And they nicked it. They went into, you don't do stuff like that. That's, you find out the name of that company and you never use them again, and you tell everybody else not to use them because they don't know what the heck they're doing. You know, or stuff like this. You can't prune like that. Don't leave stubs. Or things like this. Duct tape works great, but not for trees. You don't do that. Or you can prune like that. That didn't work out too bad there. All right, so if you decide that you watched everything that I showed you and you still think that this is the proper way to prune a tree, I'll be sitting right over here and we'll have a discussion. And that's what you see, and you can take pictures. It's amazing how many ugly, everybody is sending me now ugly, poor pruning practices. I'm like, you know, my daughter, we were at a client's house yesterday. Oh, I got some great pictures for you. I said, I got no more room. I can't do it, but they all want them. So, so I hope that has helped you with pruning. I think I've got time for a few questions. Is that okay? Questions on it? Yeah. Clematis. When you prune it, in early spring, when they start, you know, they'll tell you, because you'll go out there and they'll already be taken off. They beat you every year. They beat me every year. I'm like, oh my God, they're already out there going. So clematis early spring, you know, it all depends on the day with the weather. And I would tell you the main thing you're doing, we just did it 2 weeks ago. I just had all my pruners sharpened again, and keep them sharp. That's the main thing, because we're cutting down grasses. We're cutting a lot of stuff down now. Keep them sharp. If you don't have a good sharpener, we found the friend of the person that cuts my friend Sue's hair. They're the clip shop over there. Whoever she sends them out to, we give them all our pruners. And he charges me $5 a pair or something. And he sharpens all of them for me and stuff. And I take them in, 4 times, 5 times a year or something, because we use them a lot. We prune them a lot. Yeah, Ruth Ann. Yeah, isn't that a pain? I will repeat the question. Yeah, the question is about sap with pruners and pines and everything else. And we do use the pruners on those because it's easier to get the sap on your fingers. Make sure you wear a shirt that's not a good shirt, because you will get sap on the shirt and you can't get it out. And then we just use rubbing alcohol, and we wipe them down in between each plant. We usually wipe them down. We kind of got a little lazier. We bought the Clorox bleach wipes, and we use those now for wiping things off. But I also have we have in the car, we have rubbing alcohol that we use, we have the Clorox wipes with the bleach in them, and we have Dawn dish soap. And the Dawn dish soap is for when we accidentally get in poison ivy. And if we get in poison ivy, we immediately wash it off, put it on and rub it in real good and wash it off. And knock on wood, I'm extremely allergic to it and haven't gotten it in a long time. So those are the essentials we have. Yeah.
Unknown color.
Shoot.
I'm sorry, this one started talking to me in there for a second, so. You don't have to do any pruning right now, and I wouldn't do, I wouldn't even, well, we are taking grasses down. And you don't have to, but that's our thing, because we don't have time in the spring. And actually, to tell you the truth, I think they're better when I'm taking them down in the fall. They just seem to be more vigorous and invigorated, so. I like it.
I have two questions here from online. First one, does a rose bush have a central leader that needs to stay intact?
The rose bush many of the rose bushes do not have a central leader. You're not really looking at that. You want to keep the plant more open. Basically everything going out. So no.
What is the best tool to prune or cut through thick ornamental grass, in your opinion?
Well, you know what? We just take the hedge trimmers. We get and we use those. I see you can't use a weed whacker, and don't use a weed whacker, because if you do, that gives you a lot of jagged edges. You always want to have clean cuts. So we just sharpen our hedge trimmers and we just get in there. And you just take out little bits at a time. You go in and take this up, and you kind of strategically take the plant apart instead of going and like trying to cut the whole thing. So, and then I'll give you one thing we do is with the fountain grasses. Fountain grasses can all flop in your face, and you can get tons of plumes all over the place. So now we take a yard waste bag. I hold the grass at the base. We take a yard waste bag, put it over the top of the plant, so the whole plant is covered. And then we go and take the hedge trimmers and then just cut it at the base, and then just turn the bag over. We used to use bungee cords, and those were okay, but bungee cords, we still got a bunch of plumes in our face. And I'm going to tell you something really bad, and I'm going to tell you this, and I'm not going to show it. I do have the picture on the camera. With the ornamental grasses, I got a plume. I didn't know it, but I got a plume stuck in my ear, and it started growing. I know it's the craziest thing. I went to the ear doctor just for a regular thing, and the ear doctor comes running in, and he's like, looks at, and he's got it on this camera, and we're all looking, and he's got this thing, and he's like, oh my God, he goes, just a minute, and he goes running out of the room, and I'm like, he ran out and he got everybody, and he brings everybody back in. Swear to God, I'll show you the picture. They took a picture for me. And he's like, and I said, well, I got a feeling that's an ornamental grass plume. And he's like, and so then he was afraid to take it out, because he thought that when he pulled it out, it would like break apart. And so he did, but it had my ear. It had started kind of growing around it, and there was actually like a little blood that came out when he got it, but he got it out. So always be aware. So put a bag over your ornamental grass, and you'll be that's the moral of the story on that one. And I haven't gone back to that ear doctor since. Yeah, in the back. And they went in how to plant a peach tree. And you know what, there's a whole separate thing on fruit trees and everything, and you're going to do those very early in this. Well, like same thing, like at least 3 days of above 30 degrees, I would say, is your best guide, but you're going to do them in the spring. And I would look up, there's like an open modified method. That's the best thing. And it's the same thing. You're watching crisscrossing branches, and you're doing everything else and letting sun get in. But there's like specific ones on the open modified one method, I believe, is the best that we've used before. But 3 days above 30 degrees is also, but it's in the spring early for peach trees. Yeah.
But like, don't do anything now, but what about, I have these, like you said, mop head hydrangeas.
Mop head hydrangeas, yeah.
Deb had all that.
Oh, you can deadhead the, yeah, if you want to deadhead the mop heads, go ahead.
Said they go on.
No, the mop heads go on new growth in the springtime, so you can, oh, wait, I'm sorry, I'm thinking the Annabelles, and you're talking the mop heads, the macrophyllus. The ones with the white ones, the big white ones? Yeah, okay, so any of the hydrangeas, like I'm not pruning a lot of them, but especially the ones that got the flower heads too big, I'm taking those off because ice is gonna come and do a lot of, probably break branches. So I'm doing more of that, like just looking at the plant and taking off anything that would be a problem that way, that would break up, that would, because the weight of the branch with the head on will split it. So I'm looking that way. And then in the spring is when you take everything back. Those mop heads bloom on new growth. So you're gonna take them down to, you take the thickest ones out at the base, and the thinner ones you leave up about a foot.
Now, or
In spring, in April. Yeah, April's fine.
And what about your branches that are right next to it, but they don't look right next to it?
Get rid of them and you'll buy new ones. Yeah.
They are. And the blue one like crazy, and then the blue ones.
Do you know what variety it is?
Oh, but it's not the same.
Okay, so that's what you gotta find out, is the variety on it.
It's the same soil, same light, same sun.
Doesn't matter if it's a different cultivar, yeah, and sometimes it just takes them a couple of years too.
Can I trim them back?
Yes,
In the spring,
yes,
not now, leave them in there.
right.
Leave them alone.
Leave them alone now, trim them back in the spring.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yep, I can take just a couple more, 2 more. Okay, and then, yeah, I'll stay here forever, so that doesn't matter. Do you want to shut this off, Pete?
No, I don't, but I just wanted to make a note because several people are leaving already. Tom, where is Tom? Right here, there he is. Jacob, is just stood up there. We've got a wedding tonight and we've got all the decorative people that are out in the front. If any gentleman would like to help these two people, and Mike, our head gardener out there, we're gonna roll them sort of out of the way so they're not quite as visible. And so we got a second to help roll a couple of those balls out of the way. I really appreciate it. Other than that, you can continue as long as you want.
Okay.
If anybody wants to help out.
And whoever else wants to leave, you're welcome. I won't be insulted if I know you gotta go. Ella, what kind of what? Wait, what? What's a, what kind of saw?
Yeah.
That's a reciprocating saw. So it basically, it's on it kind of looks like it's got like a long handle to it, and then it's a blade that's straight out. I gotta take a picture of that. That's my favorite one. It's I bought a Bosch and it's lasted me for a long time, but it's because you can get right in and it's thin, and so you're not cutting the next branches next to it. You can work with it very. I can take down branches with it up, all over the place. It's a great one, but I would look into it. If you're doing a lot of pruning, I would look at, and then what you do is you go to Home Depot or Lowe's in the spring or whatever, and you buy, they have a 3-pack of pruning saw blades. So you don't buy the blades for anything else, you buy pruning saw blades. But I gotta tell you, the ones I got the last time, I wasn't as happy with them. They seem too coarse, and I'm going back to get my other ones that I think I got at Home Depot. I think my husband picked these up for me at Lowe's, and they're a little bit too thick, and I'm not happy with them. They're kind of ripping stuff up. So, but you can get pruning saw blades for them, and that's what you would use. Yeah.
Hi, we have a really pretty little oak tree that was growing in a very bad spot. If I wanted to transplant that, one would be a good time to do.
If you're gonna transplant an oak tree, it's a small one or a relative, yeah, okay. I would do it late winter. I would do it winter, or yeah, I mean, what you can do now is you could actually dig the hole, have everything ready to go if you want, and even like put, like some people, like after Halloween is over and everybody's got big straw bales laying around, take a straw bale and put it in the hole that you got ready, so that you got it filled up stuff. And then in the spring, you could dig up the oak and then transplant it and put it in there and it's ready to go. But because of that oak wilt, even if it's small, I would only do it at that time.
Like early spring?
Yeah, yeah, March, yeah.
Okay, great, thanks.
yeah. Mhm.
I have a non-redwood that I read about as a miniature, right? Not a miniature, but a logo, a logo that I had to have them, right? Well, obviously, how stupid is that? It's getting really out of hand, it has to come down. So I had the idea of really topping it off and seeing if it'll regenerate a bit, because it does grow some stuff on the bottom. And I think if I take the top off, it's gonna be a big leader, am I gonna be able to turn it into like a shrub, or am I gonna kill it?
I wouldn't do it. I mean, it is one, if you do something like that, I mean, well, if you got nothing to lose, you know, then go ahead and do it, but I don't know that because it is a main central leader. I would think you would, you're gonna create it's gonna create havoc, everything's gonna go in different, it's gonna make you're gonna have to do a lot more maintenance from then on to keep it. But I mean, you got nothing to lose if you're gonna take it out anyway. Drawn redwood is a cool plant, but it can get 150 feet, it's medical sequoia glyptostroboides. It's an incredible, it's a sequoia plant. And so it's huge. So, but if you got nothing to lose, what the heck,
I didn't understand more. More means it's just gonna take a bit. We're gonna get humongous.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Trimming box.
Oh, boxwood, I'm sorry, I never did.
Did that, and they just ended up having to be struggled with the spring. They came back, but I don't think they did it right, so.
The boxwood, there's a lot of issues going on with boxwood, and in a nutshell, I would still go with we get out there in March, we pull up we get out there in March, we trim them then, and a lot of times what we're doing is kind of thinning them and taking out some of the old stuff in the center so that they're not as tight, and then we'll go back and hedge trim them a little bit. But don't overwater them. They need water the first couple of years to get established, and then actually they don't like water, and they especially don't like overhead watering. So those are the two things I would say the most with boxwood. People, they start looking bad, so people water them even more, and plus we had enough rain. But if we just go in and we always kind of thin them a little. They still look like a nice boxwood, but they still got some like little windows in them. And by doing them that way, they're getting moisture into the center, and they don't get water the rest of the time. There's Gary Eichen is the guru on those. I don't know if they are working on maybe getting him to do a talk for you guys. He does it just on boxwood, and he is phenomenal.
So, does it happen just completely dry? Is that an issue too?
Well, you don't want to ever cut any plants when they're wet. I mean, you never want to do that. I should have said that a long time ago, but you never want to cut anything when it's wet. You always want to let it dry out and then prune it that way. But we always end up snipping them a couple times through the year. Like we go in March, we do our major work and get them the way we want, and then we probably go back in June and snip them a little bit more, and we end up doing them a couple times to keep them the way the client wants them. If they're my own, I don't do that. I keep them more open and airy. But if it's going to be a hedge trim, then I keep them tighter. So I want to thank you guys all. Ruth Ann, you got anything? I'm sorry, for the boxwood, yeah, you're still, the boxwood is such a quandary. I mean, it really is, because people want to have them tight and thin. And to tell you the truth, I'm not planting boxwood anymore. I'm planting inkberry. The inkberry hollies, I'm using those instead. They look just like a boxwood, but they have little white flowers on them, and they're a better, stronger plant, and they're not getting the diseases that the boxwoods are getting. Boxwood has 4 major diseases now, and they're going to be more and more of a problem. It's just like anything else, like when you have too many oaks, too many elms, too many this, too many ashes, then you get something that comes in and, so you gotta kind of manage the boxwood, a little bit different, but if anything, they like less water than more water. And those would be like the main things, and then just kind of lightly trim them. So I think we're, come on over. I know, grab the hot. All right. All right.
Garden Club, our next group in January, and everyone.
And Sue's gonna come back again in 2024. Thank you.